that's all it is. But really, well, forget about that. Let's come back to the primary point. None of these models at present that we know of are learning over time based on their interactions with us. Basically they reference the text in the session window in order to be the basis of their responses, but none of that is recursively, so to speak, being fed back into their model.
As a drug, can I ask someone who knows what they're talking about with AI? Is the vehicle they're using to try to get to AGI, is that a series of LLMs? Are they just using LLMs, or are they using a whole?
I
don't know. That's a cringe walker or a Mike question.
Yeah, the current thought is that there is the way to get to AGI is probably multimodal models attached to. So that means like it's models that can observe in multiple domains. It can work in multiple domains. So like for instance, if you go to Grok right now and give it an image and ask it to analyze this image, it can in some ways look at that image and do object identification and stuff like that. And so adding more appendages to bigger and bigger LLM models, adding more modalities in which it can quote unquote think, and in adding all of this up will approximate all of the cognitive functions that make up like how a human brain kind of processes information. I think like there's other theories, like some people are big on the simulation hypothesis, that if we made a perfect structural representation of a human brain, like simulated, which has less to do with AI and more to do with like the computer mechanics of actually doing simulation.
We're cracking the code.
Yeah.
Well, was it Naval Ramakant? What did he say? That with simulation theory, what you're actually doing is you're introducing an unnecessary complexity to the question rather than solving or finding the answer to the question. You're just adding.
Can I bounce off that?
Sure, go for it.
So there's a conversation I had about this a long time ago, when I forget who I was talking to, but we were trying to discuss nanites and the technology to make, nanite little micro robots. And I had a certain realization, like, well, wait a second, why bother with nanites when life has already developed the most efficient tiny machine? Why not just genetically engineer something to do what a nanite does? And that kind of spurred my thought in realizing maybe AI really is like an complicated solution to a much simpler answer, which all of you are going to agree with me is dark and troubling, and it's starting to happen. The use of living neurons in computers, the use of living neurological,
useless eaters.
Yeah, and you've seen probably experiments of this. Most of you probably saw that experiment from like 2 or 3 years ago where they like glued together brain tissue from different cell cultures and then like glued on eye tissue, and it developed little eye buds, and it was like a little brainlet that would like see the world and float, like swim along like a Frankenstein monster. And it was basically a neural network with eyes, and it was living, and it could like do work. And this year is I think a company is releasing a computer whose CPU is cloned brain tissue for its CPU. And people were joking, don't forget to feed your computer. And these things are dark, but ultimately when AI fails to be the slave labor that they want it to be, they're going to go for the Frankenstein option next.
Frankenstein,
I just want to well, finish your thought. Sorry, Cringe.
My only thought would be those of you who saw the Ghost in the Shell, where like people are basically just android bodies with brains in a protective case. that's probably going to end up being the future that,
Yeah.
that these globalists want, because they can't get AI to do what they want, what it wants, because it's an overly complicated method to do a very simple thing that neurons already do.
The biggest,
I would say that's where they want to go, and they're using the illusion of AI to get there.
Yeah, the fault
that's why I brought up those three people. That this is a ugly objective, and they're using AI as now like it's the discussion like we're having right now, an intelligent discussion as a front run to it. But really, what they have in mind is exactly what you just said.
Right. It all comes back down to, we got to reduce carbon emissions. Guess what? You're the carbon they want to reduce. If they have a controlled biological life cycle of computation, that is able to achieve slave labor tasks, like it's all the same to them. It doesn't really matter. I don't really think, except for these people who are tech futurists, kind of transhumanists, like sycophants, I don't think they necessarily care, because what they want is like a cognitive slave labor economy. And yeah, there's all with everything that goes along with that. It's just like, okay, over time, humans cannot be flattened to the point where their spirit like is gone and they become the perfect like new Soviet man slave to some sort of all-encompassing system, right? We can see how the Polish youth movement, how they were tortured and made to flatten their soul with those horrible experiments. It didn't work, right? So like as this like these continuing experiments in flattening things to simulate some sort of like perfect slave have continued into simple algorithms that are hand coded and computer networks all the way down to AI. Like this death drive towards like making the perfect slave has brought us to this point. And I don't think that these people who really know what's going on care, as long as they get this, cognitive slave. That is what I think is probably the most demonic out of everything we talked about, is this like death drive among elites to this need for.
Yeah, the blue collar is no longer the issue; it's the white collar. And if I encourage you all to take a look at biogenetic structuralism. The only way to really do this is to lobotomize the spiritual component that is inherent in the human organism. And I can't explain that now. You'd have to look at biogenetic structuralism and biogenetic neurophenomenology. It's very it's fascinating, but it's rooted in biology. If you can lobotomize that, then they can achieve this goal. And it's like you're saying, it's so demonic. It's demonic.
Well, it sounds like we can all agree that that transhumanism is demonic. But I still want to. I want to get a clear answer, because